He beat the best in the world, then lost every single match the next season, from world champion to rock bottom, fast. Glen Durrant didn't just collapse, he imploded. Life on TV, match after match, fans watched him fall apart. But what they didn't see was worse. Because behind the scenes, something was breaking and no one knew how bad it really was. Glen Durrant was never supposed to make it. He wasn't a teenage phenom or a product of some elite system. He was a housing officer from Middlesbrough, 30 years in the same job, same town, same routine. Darts was just something he did after work. Weeknight leagues, pub tournaments, local county matches. No sponsors, no spotlight. Just a guy with a steady hand and a quiet obsession. For years, that was enough, until one moment changed everything. At a county match, a friend pulled him aside and said, "You just don't leave Middlesbrough, do you?" And Glen knew what he meant. He could beat anyone who walked through the door, but only if they walked through his door. He'd never tested himself beyond the bubble. That conversation stuck with him. And at 41, an age when most athletes are winding down, Glen finally decided to go all in. Once Glen left home, everything changed. He started traveling, playing bigger events, and winning. What began as a gamble quickly became a run no one expected. By 2012, he was lifting trophies in Northern Ireland, then across Europe. In 2015, he beat former world match play champ Larry Butler at the World Masters. That wasn't supposed to happen, not for a 45-year-old housing officer. But Glen didn't stop there. In 2017, he did the unthinkable. He won the BDO World Championship, one of the biggest titles in darts outside the PDC, and it wasn't a fluke. He came back and defended it, then did it again. 3 straight world titles, 2017, 2018, 2019. At Lakeside, he wasn't just a contender, he was the man to beat. He wasn't flashy, he didn't fire off 180s like a human highlight reel. But he was clinical. He dragged players into deep water and drowned them in slow, suffocating match play. Glen was a master of pressure, cold, calculated, relentless. But even at his peak, people questioned him. The BDO wasn't what it used to be. Smaller crowds, weaker talent pool, lower prize money. So when Glen announced he was jumping to the PDC in 2019, it wasn't met with applause, it was met with doubt. He was already 48. Could he hang with the big names? Michael Van Gerwen, Peter Wright, Gary Anderson. These weren't weekend warriors. These were global stars. The pressure was brutal, but Glen didn't blink. Within months of joining the PDC, he made headlines. Then in 2020, during the pandemic's behind closed doors season, he shocked the sport. He won the Premier League, one of the most elite tournaments in darts, reserved for the very best. No crowd, no lights, no roar of fans, just Glen, a dart in hand and complete control. He beat Nathan Aspinall in the final, topped the table ahead of Van Gerwen, Price, Wright, everyone. It should have been the highlight of his career, but instead, it was the beginning of the end. The night Glen Durrant lifted the Premier League trophy, he should have been on top of the world, but something fell off, and he knew it. His throw didn't feel right, his release was awkward, his arm was pulling too far back. It wasn't panic, yet, but it wasn't normal either. 6 hours after winning the biggest title of his life, Glen was on a flight to Germany for a European tour event. No break, no reset, no time to breathe. That trip ended in disaster. At the airport, he tested positive for COVID. He got hit hard, lost weight, felt weak, couldn't train. He came back to the UK a shell of himself. From that moment on, everything started slipping. The winds dried up. His grip changed, his confidence vanished, he stopped trusting his mechanics. The throw that once came naturally now felt foreign. He started overthinking every match, every leg, every dart. Fans saw the scorelines. What they didn't see was the freeze. Glen would stand at the oche and his hand wouldn't move. His arm wouldn't respond. It was like a pianist forgetting middle C. A golfer with the yips. He called it what it was, panic. The same man who once walked into arenas thinking about who he'd face in the final was now afraid to throw a dart. He kept trying, he kept showing up, but the losses kept piling up. 1 turned into 10, 10 into 20. At the 2021 Premier League, the collapse was complete. 9 games, 9 losses, 0 wins on live TV. He wasn't just losing, he was being humiliated. And it wasn't just the results, it was the silence. The walk back to the hotel alone, lying in bed, fully clothed, lights off, staring at the ceiling and whispering to himself, Where has it gone? It wasn't physical. It wasn't tactical. It was psychological. There was no injury to fix. No coach could patch this. Glen hadn't just lost matches. He'd lost belief. He tried everything. New routines, different coaching, even returning to local leagues. But every match felt heavier than the last. The guy no one wanted to play became the guy everyone hoped to draw. There's one story Glen tells that cuts deeper than any loss. He was at the red car races with his daughter when a stranger recognized him. "You still playing snooker?" the guy asked. Glen laughed and said no. The man fired back, "Good, 'cause you're shut at darts." People laughed. Glen didn't. By then the decline wasn't just on the scoreboard, it was inside his head. Darts, once his escape, had become a source of dread. He stopped practicing, stopped enjoying it. The fear of throwing had replaced the thrill of competing. At the 2021 World Grand Prix, Glen's average dropped to 58. That's not pro level, that's pub standard. During one match, he quietly picked up his darts, shook hands, and walked off. No fight left, no spark, just exhaustion. He wasn't Dawes the world champion anymore. He was just Glen, and Glen didn't know who that was without darts. He lingered in the sport hoping for answers, watching old footage, tweaking his grip, replaying every missed double in his head. But the magic never came back. There was no farewell tour, no dramatic goodbye, just a quiet exit. Glen stopped entering events, didn't reapply for his tour card. He didn't announce retirement, he just faded out, slowly. Back in Middlesbrough, he built a small practice room, lined it with trophies, shirts, old photos, a museum of who he used to be. But the board stayed mostly untouched. He started talking publicly about what he went through, anxiety, panic, the mental side of losing, how success became pressure, how failure made him feel invisible. He admitted the truth. He didn't love darts anymore, and when you fear the thing you used to love, there's nothing left to fight for. He even took a job outside darts, working again in housing, but his heart wasn't in it. He was still searching, not for a comeback, but for peace. Glen didn't find peace by throwing again. He found it by stepping back and helping others step forward. Not as a player, but as a coach, a mentor, a voice of experience in a sport that rarely talks about what losing does to the mind. He started working with the young players, sharing the advice he wished he'd gotten, teaching them how to hold the line when things fall apart, how to stay grounded when the winds dry up, how to find purpose beyond performance. One of those players was his nephew, Jaime. Glen calls him his star student, not just for talent, but for what Jaime gave him in return, perspective. Watching someone else fall in love with the game reminded Glen that joy was still possible, even if it wasn't his anymore. Fans still sent messages, pundits still praised him, but sympathy wasn't what he wanted. "I don't want people to feel sorry for me," he said. "I want them to hate playing me again, because it means I'm winning." But he wasn't. Not on the stage, not in rankings, not in scorelines. What Glen found instead was something more honest, clarity. He's not chasing trophies anymore, he's chasing something deeper. And for a man who once ruled the Oki, that shift from spotlight to service might be the most meaningful win of all. There was no farewell tour, no big announcement. Glen Durrant didn't walk off into the sunset, he just stepped away, quietly, slowly. Not because he had to, but because the joy was gone. But that wasn't the end of his story, because while his time on the Oki faded out, his voice only got louder. Glen didn't disappear, he reinvented himself. Today, he's one of the most respected and recognizable darts commentators on TV, and he brings something no stat sheet ever could: empathy, insight, lived experience. He knows what it feels like to rise and what it costs to fall. That's why fans connect with him. He doesn't just call the action, he understands it. Behind every dart, he sees the pressure, the mindset, the silent battles no one else talks about. He never got the perfect ending as a player. But in the commentary box, Glen Durrant found something else. Purpose. Not chasing wins, not fighting ghosts. Just telling the game's truth with clarity, compassion, and the kind of honesty only a former champion can deliver.